Now, when I see this title from Silver Doctors, it reminds me of what Lindsey Williams said way in advance of this taking place. You're going to hear about currency wars and trade wars, and then possibly real wars. For sure, that's what Gerald Celente says. Currency wars, trade wars, then real wars. Lindsey Williams, on the other hand, didn't say the real wars. He said trade wars and currency wars. You're going to get used to hearing that word, just like the derivatives thing. So, again, Silver Doctors, trade wars goes nuclear. The relationship between the United States and China is officially dead. The U.S. has gone nuclear on China in a trade dispute over steel, and the Chinese response is likely to be at least as strong. What happens when the two largest economies on the planet start fighting a trade war with one another? And I already know what China's going to do. China is going to simply devalue their dollar. They'll keep devaluing to be competitive. It doesn't matter. They don't care about the steel exports to the U.S. and this 450 or 500%, trade fee or, tariff or whatever the hell they're calling it. They don't care. And this is actually from Michael Snyder. Was this endoftheamericandream.com? Well, that sounds like a fitting website for old J-Snip 4, actually. I kind of like that name. As you will see below, the U.S. has gone nuclear on China in a trade dispute over steel, and the Chinese response is likely to be at least as strong. Meanwhile, events in the South China Sea have brought tensions between the Chinese government and the Obama administration to a boiling point. The Obama administration strongly insists that China does not have a legal right to those islands. And in China, there is now talk that it may ultimately be necessary to confront the United States militarily in order to keep control of these islands. Most Americans may not realize this, but the relationship between the United States and China is officially going down the tubes, and this is likely to have a significant consequences during the years to come. Now, as I read that little section, I got to tell you again, John Teeter. He said this was going to be between the United States, China, and Russia. China and Russia have been allies for a long time and have grown stronger as allies in recent years. We're over there screwing around with China. They're building these man-made islands, first of all, off of their, area. I'm not sure exactly how far off their coast, but, in that general area of China or that general area of the world. And we're over there poking, little sticks. We're poking with little sticks. Russia's doing flybys around our, aircraft and aircraft carriers, like they're playing with us. And I don't see anyone doing anything else to any of us, right? There's no one else in regards to the United States that anything like that's happening to us. No, in other words, no one else is doing that to us. Likewise, no one's doing anything to Russia. And no one's doing anything to China. So it's literally us three, and those two are on the same side. We don't really have anyone to fall back on because Britain's not involved in this. No one's involved in this. So I hear that, and instantly my mind says, John Teeter. Oh, but wait a minute. We have the Olympics coming up in Brazil, and Brazil is going to hell in a handbasket fairly quickly, by the way. So if it ends up going the way of Venezuela, you could be rest assured ain't going to be no Olympics going on. I mean, could you imagine Venezuela saying, "Oh, we're hosting the Olympics right now, and next month everything's gonna be fine. Come on down." Nobody would show up. I mean, seriously, nobody would show up. It's a freaking war zone anarchy down there. So Brazil's not quite like that, but I see a lot of these South American nations once again heading that way. And Brazil is in the midst of political turmoil, massive corruption across the board, impeachment, all this. I mean, it's out of control over there. So I got that in the back of my mind. I wonder if these Olympics are going to go on. And if they don't, oh my God, crack open the John Teeter story and reread it to my subscribers again. Because we need a refresher, if that's the case. And then I'm hearing this. We're now having tensions really built up with China. Once again, same story in John Teeter's book or whatever you want to call it. That's where my mind's at when I see this stuff. He says, let's start with the trade war that has erupted. About a week ago, we learned that the Obama administration had decided to go nuclear on China by imposing a 522% duty on cold rolled steel from China that is used in certain kinds of manufacturing. In some regard, China has reason to be angry. The U.S. unleashed what is nothing short of a nuclear bomb in its rapidly escalating trade war with China and recently imposed duties of 522% on cold rolled steel used in automobiles and other manufacturing. In doing so, it has rendered Chinese exports to the U.S. unsustainable and will force even more excess Chinese production to remain landlocked within China's borders, making the domestic glut and price collapse that much worse. Subsequently, it was announced that a 450% duty will be imposed on corrosion-resistant steel from China. Corrosion-resistant steel from China will face final U.S. anti-dumping and anti-subsidy duties of up to 450%. Needless to say, the Chinese are less than amused because these shock and awe trade duties, or duty fees, were clearly designed to punish China. And of course, the truth is that China has been abusing us for years. So there is definitely a case to be made that they deserve even harsher treatment. However, we need to keep in mind that the Chinese will retaliate for this. And when they retaliate, it will likely be quite painful for us. But for the moment, they are just issuing vague threats. All China has to actually do, you know how many, I know at one point they had 2 or 3 something trillion in U.S. paper, treasuries. I don't know what they currently have, to tell you the truth. But I can assure you, it's at the very, very, very least hundreds of billions of dollars, if not 1 or 2 trillion still. All China would have to do to teach us a lesson, and I mean instantly, pain felt instantly, go to the COMEX market, buy a few $1 billion worth of gold, a few $1 billion worth of silver contracts, and then immediately demand delivery. I'm not waiting to the end of the month. I want delivery now. Here's the full amount. Give me my gold and silver. $7-8 billion worth of gold. Each of them, 3 or 4 billion gold, 3 or 4 billion silver. It would be enough to destroy the COMEX right now. And that would cause some serious pain for the United States because we don't want any competing currencies, including gold and silver, to outdo our dollar. And if we can't deliver gold and silver, and we're using that entity, the COMEX, to set the price of gold and silver, and now we can't deliver gold and silver, looks like we ain't going to be setting the price anymore. And then China's going to say, oh, well, we already got these exchanges, by the way. We were going to take that gold and silver you guys had on your exchanges and bring it over to our physical only exchanges, but you don't seem to be able to produce it. What's going on over there? And I have a feeling, because I'm certainly not the smartest guy in the room, but I bet those folks over in China, the top dogs, know this very well. So my question is, what in the hell are they waiting for? China's Commerce Ministry said it was extremely dissatisfied at what it called the irrational move by the United States, which it said would harm cooperation between the two countries. China will take all necessary steps to strive for fair treatment and to protect the company's rights, it said without elaborating. Meanwhile, events in the South China Sea continue to push the United States and China towards conflict. Let me summarize a few of the most important things that we have seen over the past month. In early May, Chinese authorities refused to give permission to the USS John C. Stennis battle group to make a routine port call at Hong Kong. The Chinese had not turned away a U.S. aircraft carrier in almost a decade, and many believe that this was in direct response to comments that U.S. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter had made regarding China's territorial claims in the South China Sea. Subsequently, the Obama administration sent the USS William P. Lawrence sailing within 12 nautical miles of the disputed islands in the South China Sea. This was the third time that Obama has sent naval vessels cruising by those islands, and it provoked an extremely angry response from China. Just last week, 2 Chinese fighters and a U.S. spy plane nearly collided in midair approximately 50 miles away from Hainan Island. This incident made headlines all over the planet. Most Americans seem to believe that the Chinese are our friends, but in China, the perspective is completely different. The Chinese consider the U.S. to be their number one long-term strategic adversary, and they have been working feverishly to prepare for a future conflict with us. For example, China just conducted a successful test of a new hypersonic glide vehicle that we do not have any defense against. The following comes from the Washington Free Beacon. I almost said free bacon. China successfully flight tested its new high-speed maneuvering warhead last week, days after Russia carried out its own hypersonic glider test, according to Pentagon officials. Once again, these two are friends, and we are not part of that friendship. The test flight of the developmental DF-ZF hypersonic glide vehicle was monitored after launch Friday atop a ballistic missile fired from the Huazhai Missile Launch Center in central China, said officials familiar with reports of the test. So, in addition, just today there were global headlines announcing that China is poised to send subs carrying nuclear missiles into the Pacific for the first time ever. The Chinese military is poised to send submarines armed with nuclear missiles into the Pacific Ocean for the first time, arguing that new U.S. weapon systems have so undermined Beijing's existing deterrent force that it has been left with no alternative. Chinese military officials are not commenting on the timing of the maiden patrol, but insist the move is inevitable. Let us hope that a full-blown shooting war with China does not erupt anytime soon, but the reality is that we are already locked in a conflict with the Chinese on a number of different levels. On a recent piece, X-Keyscore summarized some of the ways in which China is already seeking to gain the upper hand. And here's a few of those pointers, which is how I'm going to end this video. Economic warfare, purchase and or sale of U.S. Treasury bills, their currency manipulation, government subsidized output, as in consumer goods, and trade/tariff manipulation. Cyber warfare, engaging in data theft, backdoors, viruses, hacking. Cyberkinetic warfare, the creation and deployment of Stuxnet type viruses and hacking which will lead to physical damage of infrastructure such as power grids, nuclear facilities, hydroelectric, and telecommunications systems. Socio-political warfare, establishment of Confucian centers in the U.S. And I don't think it's, wise men once said, or Confucius say, not that kind of center in the U.S. and around the globe, and the funding of U.S. universities in exchange for roles in university policy-making processes, which often in turn promote communist ideology. Territorial. China runs post operations in many of the world's largest and most strategically valuable ports and SLOCs, or sea lines of communication. The best example is the Panama Canal. Both ends of the canal are actually controlled by China. To most Americans, our rapidly deteriorating relationship with China is not much of an issue right now, and very few of our politicians are even talking about it. However, I am fully convinced that this is an extremely ominous development and that it will have very, very serious implications for our country during the years to come. So, Gerald Celente, trends forecaster extraordinaire, current events form future trends. Currency wars, trade wars, real wars, as he says. Take care.